Hi, if you ever were interested in video processing, then you must have come across OpenCV, specifically OpenCV's video capture function. That function allows you to read from videos stored in disk in your PC or from your webcam feed live. So those are two of the most common sources that people use when they use OpenCV. But do you know that you can also read from an IP camera or even install an IP camera application on your phone and read from your phone's camera live into your PC in OpenCV? Plus, you can also read from GIFs. So there's a bunch of things that you can do with that video capture function in OpenCV. And I'm going to show you how to read from all those sources in this tutorial. Plus, I'm also going to show you some interesting things regarding, like how to set some certain properties or get some certain properties regarding that video that many people miss out on. And I feel that those are some pretty neat, useful things that you should know. So let's get started with this tutorial. So this is the Jupyter notebook that we'll be using in this tutorial. And yeah, so as always, we'll be importing the OpenCV library, import CV2 and matplotlib library, and this timer library to calculate the FPS later on. So let's run this and move on. So this is the function that we use, cv2.video capture function. So there are two ways that you normally use about it. You pass in the file name to read a video from disk, and you pass in the index of a webcam when you're reading from a webcam. So these are two of the most common ways to read about it, but there are some other ways, and I will show you later on how to read those sources too. So anyways, the two parameters that you will need to specify whenever using this cv2.video capture function is that first, if you're reading a video from disk, you'll specify the path of that file. So if it is in the working directory, just pass in the file name like video.avi, video.mp4, etc. And then pass in the API preference, and this is optional and this is not even that important, so you can forget about it, but it's just preferred backend to to specify which will read the video. So sometimes I feel that if I use this CapT show with a certain camera, it works, the video the webcam opens up really fast. So this is just an extra thing that just it's good to know about, but it's most of the time you won't be bothering yourself with the API. Anyways, so what you need to understand is what type of parameters or what type of input you can pass. So this is the file name. When you're reading from a video on disk, you'll pass in the video file name, and if you're reading from a webcam, you can pass in an index. Now this index can be something like 0, 1, 2, 3, depending upon which webcam you want to use. And it's not just fixed. If you have like 2 to 3 webcam attached, then maybe 0 may be referred to as one webcam and 1 may be referred to as the other one, and you need to just pop it out and plug in the numbers and just run and see which webcam is being utilized which index. So yeah, so these are some of the two ways that you can use, and the other two ways, I'll just briefly mention them, is that you can read an image sequence, something like this. Either you can pass in this format, or you can read a GIF. So if we have a .gif file, then you can read that GIF by just passing it directly in this video capture function. Or you can read from a URL video stream, and this is normally really useful when you want to read from an IP camera stream. So if you have an IP camera installed somewhere, then you can put this sort of a protocol there. And the only difficult part when reading from an IP camera is to figure out the exact protocol that's being used. But this is the most generic protocol that I've mentioned here. So you specify the host, the port, the script name, or the script parameters, and some authentication parameters. So these authentication parameters are most likely the admin username and the password that you need. A lot of times people don't specify the password or the admin username. It's not if it's a production use case, obviously you'll need to specify and set up a username or a password. But anyways, once you figure out the URL scheme for your particular IP camera, you're all set to go. In fact, you can stream from the most common stream that you use when working with IP cameras is the RTSP stream. So that is that is something you should know. And let's just jump into the code, and let me show you how you read a sample video from your folder. So I have a folder called media, and inside this folder I have this video called video.mp4, and I'm gonna use cv.video capture function to read this video. So let's run this, and what you see is that it successfully accessed the video. So here what I'm doing is, after I read up the video and the video is read up and stored in this object video reader, I'm going to call this function inside this object video reader dot is open. This function tells me that if the video was properly accessed and opened. So if it is, we print out a successful message, and if it's not, because it's a boolean, it returns a boolean true and false value. And if it did not read it correctly, then it will tell me about it. So fail to access a video. For example, let me just specify a wrong path. I mean, this video doesn't even exist. Video 2.mp4 doesn't exist. So fail to access the video. So if I specify incorrect video file name, and if I specify video that doesn't even exist, so it will tell me that it failed to read the video. So anyway, let me read up the correct video again. So this is how you read a video from disk, and these are some of the other ways that you access the video capture. I'll show you in the last cell in the final part of this tutorial how to read those sources too and how they look like. So yeah. So anyways, after I'm done with this, I'm gonna show you how to read a frame by frame. After you have initialized the video capture, now you have to use another function called cv2.videocapture.read. See, as this is the function to check if the the video source is working properly or not, and we have another function called .read. Now this .read function returns to you a frame. So this is a frame, and this is a boolean value that tells you if that frame was read correctly or not. And what usually happens is that we put this line of code inside a loop, and that loop is iterated over and over, and each time this line is run, a new frame from a video is read. So if it's an 8-second video of 25 fps, so you'll normally expect 200 frames. So for that sort of a video, each time I run this line, I'll get a new frame. I need to run this line 200 times to read the full video. So this is how this normally works. Each time you run this generates or extracts a new frame out of that video and gives it to you. Now suppose the video ends. How will you know? You will know when this return value will be false. So this ret value tells you, he can't, when you read the final frame, the 200 frame, and after that you try to read it again, this ret value will be false, and it will indicate to you that, the video I was reading, has ended. I can no longer access a valid frame. So this will be false because you can't access any new frame. So you'll have then the option to either exit or restart the process of reading the video from the start. So this is how this usually works. You get the frame that is the actual video frame, and you get the red boolean value which tells you if the frame was read correctly or not. Now in case you're reading a webcam, this return value will also be true or false in case the frame was read correctly or not, because suppose you don't have the webcam configured properly in your PC, so this red value will then also be false. It will tell you, the webcam that you have, I'm not reading the frames from it. There's something wrong with it. So this is how you know. And with the webcam, you'll also know when you run this video reader is open or not. This will also tell you that your webcam has properly been accessed or not. Anyways, let's see this cell in action. So I'm calling this function here, and then I'm checking to make sure if the frame was read properly, and then if it is, I'm gonna display it with matplotlib, and I'm gonna if it isn't read properly, I'm gonna specify failed to read the frame, and let's run this. The frame was read successfully, and if I run this cell again, then this frame would be different because it will read a new frame now. So if I run this again, now this will be a different frame that's being read. So each time I run this, you'll see a different frame. Now, because this video is a static, like video with waterfall, so it's hard to tell if a new frame is being read. But if you notice, notice it properly, you'll see some differences. And you can try it with a different video. You'll clearly see if a person is walking around, you'll see at each frame you run, the video will update. So every time I'm running this, you'll see a new frame pop up. Now, before I show you the other sources, how to read from a webcam, IP camera, and GIFs, I want to go over some really important, this really important topic, how to set and get different properties of a video. And I see that many people, don't fully, realize the potential of this video capture, function, and they miss out on all these interesting properties that you can either set or get. So if you go here, cv.video capture properties, and click here, you'll see all the properties that you can access with video capture listed out here. So some of the properties are here, and then the descriptions of those properties listed out here. And and some of the properties are restricted to the video source that you're using. For example, if you want to set, or get the hue, this is only available when you're using webcams, not when you're accessing, videos from disk. So similarly, a lot of these properties are restricted in a way that using cameras that have those properties. For example, this is how you set the zoom in a camera. This is an optical zoom. And this is only possible if you're using a camera that supports it. Similarly, there are lots of other things, there are support for cameras that support pan and tilt, and this is really awesome. And you can control those parameters if you have cameras, that support those things. So there's a function to access or get or set backlight in a camera. Similarly, lots and lots of interesting properties at hardware level that you can manipulate with this video capture function. And the difference between for example, there's another function here for setting up or getting the brightness or the the contrast, the saturation, and the difference between setting and getting these properties rather than doing the post processing in a OpenCV loop is that you're setting this at a hardware level. So you're setting the camera properties. Remember that when you're reading a webcam into a video editor or something like that, and then you have the interface to set camera properties and how you're reading it. So that's what's happening here. You're setting the properties directly for the camera on how to consume that video live. So this is really important and really useful when you're working with OpenCV. And I can't simply go over all the sources or all the properties that you can control here, but I'll just go over some of the most important ones which I think you should know. So one of them is this property, MSEC. So this is how you know at any point in a video how many milliseconds or what time has passed. And this is really useful. Suppose if a client comes to you, it gives you an object detection task and tells you, I want to know at which point these objects make an appearance in a video and how long they stay in that video. So with this, you can, anytime that object appears, you can call this function, and then you'll know exactly how many seconds has passed when that object makes an appearance and how long it stays in that part of the video. Similarly, you can also get at any time in a video how many frames has passed and what is the position of the frames. And this is also really useful because you can also set a frame. Suppose if by calling this function, you will know how many frames are contained in a video. So this gives you the frame count of the total video. Suppose you know that total video contains 200 frames, right? So when the video reaches 200 frames, you want to restart the video. So this is how you will do that. You will get this property at every iteration of a loop, and once the iteration reaches like 200, you can then set this position of frames to 0 to start. This way, when you set the frame count to 0, it will start reading the video from the start. Similarly, if you want to play the video from the midpoint, you want to have a certain video, and you only want to process the video, the second half of the video, and this is how you can go about it. You can get the frames count, and you can divide it by 2. You'll get the in between, like the middle frame, and then you can set this position of the frame as that particular number, and this way OpenCV will start reading the video from the midpoint. Like I said, this is really useful in many scenarios. You can also get the frame FPS, the actual FPS of the video, by getting prop FPS. You can also get the width and the height of the video. So these are some of the most useful properties that you can set. You can either set them by specifying the property ID or specifying this enumerator string, and you need to pass it in either with cv.videocapture.get if you want to get these values, or if you want to set these values, you do something like this: cv.videocapture.set, specify the property ID you want to change, and specify the new value that you want to set it to. As I said, I can't stress enough how important these properties are, and I see a lot of people, like they're not even utilizing this. So suppose I've seen people, like if they want to process a certain segment of a big video, they will first go in and crop out at the video and create that segment, and then pass that segment, set that segment in the disk, then read that segment with OpenCV. Instead, what they could have done and save them a lot of time is that just read that segment directly from OpenCV without getting a video editor to cut that part out. So yeah, and the other thing, some really useful thing by getting the FPS of a video is that suppose you're using a video writer function in OpenCV to save a video, and many times what ends up happening is that once you process a video and you apply a bunch of operations in it, when you write that video with video writer, you don't exactly know what sort of FPS you need to write it on. And I see people specifying a constant FPS like 10, 20 without taking into account what the original FPS of the video is. So this way you'll know which FPS the original video is currently at, and then you can specify that FPS in the video writer initialization function, and you can save the final video in that FPS. Just discard the final this final thing if you have no idea what I'm talking about, because this is just for those people who have worked with the video writer function in OpenCV. Anyways, now let me briefly show you how you get some properties by how to run this function exactly. So I have the video reader, which is the video writer video object, and I will just specify video reader.get, and I'll tell it to give me the width of the video, and similarly I'll tell it to give me the height and the FPS and the total frame count. And when I run this, I'll see that the video that I have currently read, this waterfall video, has the width of 1280 width and 720 height, and the frame rate is 29. So this video has been recorded at 29 FPS, and which is sort of a standard, and 25 to 30 FPS. This is what most of the videos these days are at, and the total frames of that video is 166. So you can just divide 166 by 29, and you'll know how long the video is in seconds. So this is really cool. Anyways, now that we have used the .get function, let's use the .set function to set a new height or a new width. So I'm trying to set I'm gonna try to set the new width as 1920 pixels and new height to 1080. So let's try this. So I'm gonna run this, and I'm gonna see this message: failed to set the width, failed to set the height. So whenever you're trying to set properties, this will also return to you a Boolean value. It will be true if the property was set successfully, and it will be false if the property wasn't set successfully. So, and you will know when you if it returns, when you run this and it returns true or false. So what's happening here? So the thing is, whenever you set some properties, this will return to you a Boolean variable. So a Boolean variable of true or false. True if the value was set correctly, false if the value wasn't set correctly. And this will happen when you're trying to set properties that are not supported. So for the width and height, you can't set the width and height of a video to arbitrary size, any arbitrary size. You can only set it to some specific resolutions or sizes, and you can understand more about it when you read it and go to the docs. So and mostly I try to set the width and the height to like a lower version whenever I'm working with webcams, not with actual videos. For if you want to set a new height or width when you're working with videos, just use OpenCV's cv.resize function to resize it to a particular size. But normally I set a particular width or height whenever I'm working with a webcam. So by default, OpenCV I think reads the video into like 640 or 480. Whenever I want to read it to its highest resolution of a webcam, I specify the highest resolution that I know that the webcam has, and I know that particular width and height combination will work. So that's when I use it, when I specify the exact width and height I want to use for that particular webcam. As I said before, many of the properties are directly related to the type of video source that you're using and the camera or the video source that supports those things. So for example, suppose you're trying to change the tilt or the pan of a camera that doesn't even support those things, so it's not going to work. It's going to tell you false. It's going to return to like false. It's not, it hasn't set those properties because something went wrong. So this is when you know that you can't set those properties with those values. And yeah, so there's an indicator for that here. All right, so these are this was a highlight on how to get certain properties of a video and how to set certain properties of a video. I will strongly recommend that you go over some of the properties that are highlighted there and just see the descriptions and the things that you can do. And there's a whole lot you can do, and I can't just cover all of it in this video alone. So anyways, moving on finally to some other video sources. And before that, let me just show you how the full flow of reading a video and displaying it with OpenCV live for a video saved in disk works. And then I'm going to repeat the same process for the other things. So here I'm setting the width and height to this resolution, and I'll see if this worked or not. You'll see a true or false variable. I can either just print it out if I want. So anyways, after that, what I'm going to do is I can also specify this. So this way the video will be resizable. I can expand it to full screen. Otherwise it will be a strict window. So this is what allows me have a normal window which I can resize or downsize or minimize, etc. And now here I'm specifying a start timer. This is just for calculating the FPS, and this FPS is for this loop, not the video itself. So we know how to get the FPS of the video itself, but when we processing a video inside a loop, then we need to have the actual FPS of the whole iteration. So this is how I calculate the FPS. So I have this, I specify start time and I have an end time at the end of the video loop, and then I just calculate the average FPS. So this is how I normally do it, and I display the FPS on text on top of the screen. So this way I'll know whenever if I'm doing some heavy processing on the video itself, the FPS will slow down a bit. So this is how I know what sort of FPS I'm getting at for my operations that I'm performing on the video itself. Anyways, I have this frame counter which is set to 0. I'll increment the frame counter every time I read a new frame. And I have this optional variable which is repeat video true. Right now I've set this to true, which means when I'm reading a video, if this is true, I'm gonna restart the video whenever it reaches the end. So I have just a short logic encoded here. So if repeat video is true and the frame counter has reached the I think the frame counter has reached the end of the video. So remember this frame count. This will tell you how many total frames the video contains, and if the frame counter has reached the end of the video, so I'm incrementing the frame at each iteration. So if these two are equal, that means I have reached the end and I need to restart the video. And this is how I do that. I set the position of the frame as 0. So I'm setting video reader.set cv.cap prop position of the frames at 0. So this will restart the video again. So suppose if the total video frames are 200 and I specify this 100, if I set it to 100, I think the total frames are 166. So if I set this to 83, this will start the video at the middle. If I set this to 83, now this will start the video at the middle, but I don't want that. I just want the video to be restarted whenever it reaches the end. So this is why I'm going to set this to 0, and then I'm also going to set the frame counter to 0 again, and then I'm going to start the time again, update the start timer, and then I'm that's it. So that's the whole logic of restarting the video when it reaches the end. And yeah, so let me just go over the loop from the start again. So I just checked the video reader has been opened, everything is all set up to finally read the video, and if it is, I'm going to start reading the video frame by frame by calling this function video reader.read, and I'm going to just check to make sure if the frame is read correctly, and if it is not read correctly, I'm going to break out of the loop. This might mean the camera is corrupted. I need to configure the webcam properly, or the video source is not there, and there can be multiple reasons. So I need to break out of the loop and I need to diagnose the issue. So that's why I have this breaker here. So to check if the video is not reading correctly, I just need to break out of the loop. And then I have this optional function. This laterally flips the frame. So let me show you what's happening here. So I'm just gonna drag this here. So this is the OpenCV window that's being displayed to me right now. And if I just set this to 0, this is gonna be vertically flipped. And if I set it to 1, this is gonna be horizontally flipped. And if I just comment this out, then you will see the actual original video. And in the original video, this hole is on the right side. And if I just again flip the video, you will see this laterally flip. And why if you're wondering why I'm doing this, so normally I usually read videos from a webcam, and when I'm reading from a webcam, and let me show you when I read from let me show you how to read this from a webcam. So I have this webcam at 0, and if I run this, let me this one will pop. So yeah, this is how I'm here. This is my right hand and this is my left hand. This is how I want the video to be. I want to see the mirror view, the mirror view. And if I don't flip this, I'll see this view, which is something I don't want. So this is my right hand, and it's it's the other way around, and it's totally this makes me dizzy, and I can't work properly with this. If I'm working with an OCR application, this is how I want the video feed to be, because if I have a text and I show it to the camera, the text would be read properly when I have this sort of a feed. But if I'm not working with OCR and I do not have to detect or recognize text on the screen, I don't want this sort of an interface. I want the video to be laterally flipped. So this is why I do call this function cv.flip to laterally flip the video. Then I'm extracting the width and the frame of this video by calling frame.shape. And this is the whole code for, as I said, calculating the FPS and displaying it on top of the screen. And then this is the function cv2.imshow, which displays the actual frame. So whenever you're seeing that frame pop up, this is the function that enables that cv2.imshow. It shows that window where the video is appearing. And after that function, what you need to do is also include this function. So this is a wait key. So this makes sure that you always have to include a wait key after the imshow function, because this makes sure this monitors the window, and it makes sure whenever someone presses a keyboard, it captures that event. So what's happening here is that whenever I press any key, whenever I launch this window and I press any key, if I press any key, W, T, L, it will capture that information and store it inside this K variable. So this K value will encode the ASCII value of any letter on the keyboard that I press, any button on the keyboard I press. And if I press the Q keyword, so if I press the Q, the window will close. Let me show you. If I press this Q, the window closes. And this is how I'm coding, the whole loop to close whenever I press the Q button. So I can change it to maybe A or any other letter or any other button. So I can do this A, the video loop will close whenever I press the A. Now this odd, function converts any letter I pass here to the ASCII value. So suppose I want to close up the window whenever I press the escape button. What I will do is just put 27 here, because I know 27 is equal to 27 is the ASCII value for the escape button here. So if I run this and I press the escape button, this will close up because 27 is the ASCII value for the escape button. Similarly, there's an ASCII value for the word Q, and I can put it directly here. So I don't exactly remember the ASCII value of Q. Maybe just I can get this out. So odd and then Q. So the ASCII value is 113. I can just replace this with 113 and it will work as before. So if I just like press the Q button, it exited as it should. So this is how you escape or the destroy the window whenever exit out of the loop whenever someone presses a certain keyboard button. And what happens after someone presses that Q, I break out of the loop. After breaking out of the loop, what you need to do is you need to release the camera. So for that, what I do is that video reader.release and also destroy the window. So you can't leave that window hanging, otherwise the program crashes. So you need to destroy that window and you need to release the camera. And releasing the camera is really important, because if you don't release the camera, the next time you try to initialize, you'll see that there's something wrong. You won't be able to initialize the video capture. You have to release the stored camera. And I think I have a second webcam attached here. So if I do something like this, it's taking its time. This camera works better if I include a direct show capture here. So I think something like D show, was it? What was it? And let me just go above, and what was a cap D show? Okay, so it's still taking its time. It's not popping up. I think where was it? Okay, yeah, so it's launching. So it's yeah, it took its time. So but if I include this like something like that, and okay, so yeah, and now this time it loads up really fast, and for some reason the FPS is incredibly slow, and I have no idea why that's happening, and maybe I'll just diagnose this later on. Anyways, I want to go back to my default webcam, which is like this one, the one here, and that is the one. And the other thing I have that I don't think many people know is that you can also do something like this. So I can exit if I press the Q button, or I can also exit if I close the window by pressing the X. So if I press this X button, the window will close. And you might think this is okay, I've been doing this on a Windows PC like forever. What's so special about this? So in OpenCV, if you press the X button, you won't be able to exit out of this window. Actually, you'll need to specify this sort of a code, and only then you'll exit out of the window. And this code notes the event or whenever someone presses the X button on that window. So it gets the Windows property of window property visible, and this way you'll know whenever someone is trying to exit out, and you'll break out of the loop. And as I said, many people working with OpenCV for long don't realize that this is also a way to exit out of the video loop. So anyways, there's that. Finally, let me show you how you can read a GIF. So this is how I'm reading a GIF. So let me just run this, and yeah, so this is how you read a GIF, and so I don't think you realize what's happening in that GIF. So let me just increase this number to 10, and it's still really fast. Let me increase it to 100, and yeah, so I think now the GIF is you can clearly see the GIF. What's happening here is someone presses the keyboard button, and rainbow appear and stuff like that. By the way, if I haven't explained what's happening here, is that cv.waitKey takes a parameter, and this parameter is the number of milliseconds to wait before moving to the next line of code. So if I specify the higher the number, the longer the wait key will wait. If I specify 1000 milliseconds equal to 1 second. So this line will make sure that it waits 1 second here, and then it moves through the next line. So you'll see the whole thing slows down by a lot when you specify this to be 1000. So yeah, now it's really slow. All right. So this is how like this whole thing works. Now I've shown you how to read different webcams, and I've shown you how to read a video from the disk, and also I've gone over the GIF. Now let me show you how you can like read from an IP camera, and this is just an HTTP like stream from my mobile. Now in my mobile I've installed an IP camera application. So go over this tutorial of mine called intruder detection, and inside the tutorial I explain in detail how to install this application in your phone, what sort of parameters you have, you can like manipulate and change. So there's a lot of options. I'm not going to cover the whole process. I have also explained all of that in detail in a blog post and also in a video tutorial. So go ahead and watch those to fully understand how to install that IP application inside your phone. So this way your phone will become like a live camera that you can access in OpenCV here. Similarly, you can do the same thing with an actual IP camera that and you can stream it live in your OpenCV stream. The only thing that is somewhat difficult is to figure out the protocol, the exact URL that you will need, because this is the only thing I think it's somewhat troublesome to figure out the exact stream URL. But once you've done that, you're all set to go to read that stream in OpenCV. Now without further ado, let me read that in here, and I guess so this should pop up. If so, I think there's an error here. What sort of an error is yeah, I think I need to do this, and I need to run it again. So yeah, so it's appearing here. So as you can see me, yeah, so this is what's happening, and I'm gonna close up this now. Okay, so that's how you access 4 different video sources in OpenCV. And I hope that this tutorial was really useful for you. You learned how to access different video streams, and you also learned how to set and get different video properties. As I said, there's a whole lot that you can do with the video capture function, and it's really important, and this is what separates you from the pack, to understand and fully utilize the video capture function in OpenCV to do video processing at another level. So this is something as a computer vision expert, as a computer vision engineer, that you should know. And anyways, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to comment and like and let me know how you found this video, if you found it useful or not, if you want to see similar sort of videos in future. And yeah, so that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.